The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 8 minutes. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 7 minutes and 30 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 7 minutes. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 6 minutes and 30 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 6 minutes. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 5 minutes and 30 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 5 minutes. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 4 minutes and 30 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 4 minutes. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes. Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 2 minutes. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 1 minute and 30 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return in 1 minute. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 45 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 30 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 15 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 5 seconds.
I might call up the Mark Warner clip in the A block if
Okay.
I have time.
He's not just a conservative voice at CNN. He's the last man standing athwart the leftist mob, delivering the fiery truth, surrounded, outnumbered, still undefeated. Fighting for free speech, Western civilization, and delivering common sense for the American people. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Scott Jennings.
December the 4th, broadcasting live from Phoenix, Arizona today. The world travels of Scott Jennings continues. As you know, the Scott Jennings Show is brought to you by, sponsored by our friends at Ease Total Health. Health insurance is broken. Ease fixes it with no deductibles, no red tape, and real benefits from day one. Visit Ease, EASE, foreveryone.com/Scott. So we're in Phoenix today. The revolution of Common Sense book tour continues. Had a travel day yesterday because I was over in California, did an event in Los Angeles, did an event in Orange County last night, and had great crowds. And so thanks to everybody who came out in California. And I popped over to Phoenix today. We're broadcasting live today from the offices of Gordon and Lisa James. Gordon James, Public Relations, an old friend of mine, Gordon and Lisa from politics from years ago. They're nice enough to have me in. And I'm looking out the window right now at the beautiful mountains out here in Phoenix, and really appreciative of being out in Arizona today. I'm speaking tonight. The book event is at the Doty London Excellence in Public Service Series lecture. So we'll be making a talk and signing some books and meeting the good people here out in Phoenix, Arizona. Tomorrow night, I'm going down to Tucson. We'll have a book event with the Pima County Republican Party in Tucson tomorrow night. Great show today, 22 minutes past the hour. Our friend Dustin Grage checking in from Minnesota. We'll get the latest on the Somali fraud scandal and why Tim Walz must be held accountable. This thing is so out of hand. $1 billion scandal. Huge. And Tim Walz looks ridiculous and hapless and complicit. Dustin Grage will tell us all about it. 33 minutes past the hour today. Noah Rothman from National Review. My friend Noah has a new book project to announce. We'll kick around the news of the day with Noah as well. But I want to start today with the crumbling Democratic narrative around what the Trump administration is doing with regards to sinking the boats of these Venezuelan drug runners. Today, Admiral Bradley, who is in charge of the military operations in this theater, testified before Congress in a closed, classified setting, and he told them something very simple about this boat strike from September the 2nd that everyone is talking about. He told them he made the decision to strike the boat multiple times with the full consultation of a military lawyer and in accordance with lawful orders from the Commander-in-Chief and the Secretary of Defense. Bradley said there was no, quote, kill them all order given by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. That's what the Democrats and some in the media have claimed, that Hegseth gave a kill them all order. Bradley, under oath, said that did not happen. Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton was in this briefing. I want you to listen to this exchange that took place as he came out the door. Here's Tom Cotton.
Senator, you said that the strikes were righteous, that there were 4 of them. Would you have taken the same shot if you were in that position?
If I was Admiral Bradley and I'd been delegated that authority, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I'd do it again.
Was there more than 4 shots?
No, there's 4.
Tom Cotton says, I would have taken the shot. And there were 4 strikes, not 2, as had been erroneously reported by the Washington Post. But here's the truth of what happened. We bombed a boat, and then we bombed it again because there were 2 narco-terrorists still on board trying to salvage the drugs that were on the boat, which caused the reason for the strike in the first place. There are no illegal orders. There is no unlawful attempt to murder 2 poor fishermen clinging to a shipwreck. There are just narco-terrorists, their drugs, and a president's determination to stop them from flooding our country with that poison. By the way, those aren't minnows in those barrels you see in the boats, folks. Those are drugs or components of drugs. They go all over our hemisphere. A lot of it winds up, by the way, in Puerto Rico, which is part of America. This stuff harms and kills Americans, and President Trump has made it clear. It is going to stop. Now, the New York Times, of all places, came along and debunked the initial erroneous report from the Washington Post, which is now parroted by Democrats all over the country, that something unlawful was done on this strike. Even ABC News has now come along to debunk this nonsense. Here's how Martha Raddatz, senior reporter, called it on ABC last night.
And tonight, new information. According to a source familiar with the incident, the 2 survivors climbed back onto the boat after the initial strike. They were believed to be potentially in communication with others and salvaging Because of that, it was determined they were still in the fight and valid targets. A JAG officer was also giving legal advice. So again, will be key. And Admiral Brad Hill tomorrow.
Think about what you were told by the media and by the Democrats, and think about what you know today. A JAG officer, a legal officer, was involved. The details that you originally heard are different than what Admiral Bradley and now other news outlets are reporting actually happened. There's just an attempt here to build a false narrative around this, specifically by Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, and it is absolutely despicable. He is the mastermind behind the unlawful orders video that came out. He is the distributor of the narrative behind this debunked Washington Post report that Pete Hegseth had done something unlawful. What Mark Kelly wanted you to believe was that the president and his Secretary of Defense had given unlawful orders, and then he invented out of whole cloth, with complicit reporters at the Washington Post, this supposed order to kill 2 unarmed people hanging off the side of a bombed-out boat. It did not happen. Kill them all did not happen. Totally made up. Totally fabricated. But this is the modern left, ladies and gentlemen. They invent narratives. They invent evidence to prove the false narratives, and they launder it through these mainstream media sources. Now, Mark Kelly knows better. He has a long military history. He knows better. But this man's brain has been rotted by politics, sheer naked politics. He has gotten to a place in his life where he will say anything. This situation is akin to the 51 intelligence officials claiming that Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation. Remember that? They used their national security credentials to fabricate a political narrative. And then the media and their party laps it up. Rinse, repeat. Same kind of an op. Kelly is doing all this for political reasons. It's to destabilize the sitting president of the United States, to undermine the current commander-in-chief, and to set up himself as a viable presidential candidate among a rabid political base that demands that these Democratic officials do nothing less than sow anarchy in the United States, at least while Donald Trump is the president. This all goes back, by the way, to the idea that Donald Trump is not a legitimate president. Democrats have not believed that Donald Trump is a legitimate president since 2016. They invented the narrative that Russia stole the election. They've believed it ever since. And therefore, they authorize and rationalize their political leaders to do anything they can to keep this man from acting as a legitimate president. They'll shut down the government. They'll try to get the military to not follow the orders, legitimate orders of the commander-in-chief. It's all politics. It's all very, very ugly. This is the Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network. A word from our friends at the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. Right now in war-torn Ukraine, elderly Jews like Maria are facing a brutal winter and a constant search for food. Now, Maria is 85. She lives alone. She's nearly blind. She has a broken hip. She's a Holocaust survivor. She lives in her childhood home. There's no indoor plumbing, no heat. It is cold, folks. She has barely enough food to survive. The hunger is unbearable. She prays for warmth and food and for someone to help her. And those people that are going to help her, the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, for over 40 years, they send supplies and boxes of food and other essentials to suffering and impoverished Jews like Maria. To learn more about the great work of the IFCJ or to help, visit urgentifcj.org. That's urgentifcj.org. We'll check in on Minnesota and the buffoon Tim Walz when we come back. It's Scott Jennings on the Salem Radio Network.
Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 4 minutes.
All I want is a remedy for all of the things ever be. Ooh, I will take a look.
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes and 30 seconds.
Baby, baby, weave out your hair. Why you always keep with your mother's hair?
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes.
Tell me, did the other children's going on you? If I come on like a dream, ooh, will you let me show you what I mean? Will you let me come?
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
All I want is a remedy for all of the things that me. I could totally take a no to please me.
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 2 minutes. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 1 minute and 30 seconds.
I need a remedy, yeah. For what is enemy, you see? I need a remedy for what is enemy. I need a remedy, yeah, for what's enemy.
Radio Network will return in 1 minute.
Oh, you see, I'm finding. Oh, I really want it. You see,
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 45. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 30 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 15 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 5 seconds.
she walks into Smokies one hip at a time.
He's the author of the best-selling book, A Revolution of Common Sense. Scott Jennings.
Just don't wait up for me. I'll be working late tonight.
Arizona, Scott Jennings with common sense for the American people. On the phone today, Dustin Grage, a townhall.com columnist and a political analyst, a political insider from the state of Minnesota. Dustin, thanks for joining us on the Scott Jennings Show. We need your expertise here because we're watching this corruption scandal unfold in Minnesota. And it appears to me that it's not one scandal. You've got COVID corruption scandals. You've got Medicaid fraud. You've got sort of multiple layers, and they all appear to lead back to Tim Walz and the Somalian community in Minneapolis. Can you help us make sense of what's going on in Minnesota with this buffoon of a governor that you have there? Dustin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Scott. Good talking. I'll relay to you what I've said since the day Tim Walz became the VP nominee for Kamala Harris. God bless her for picking him as the VP nominee, because what a gift to the Republican Party of Minnesota and the national fraud. And the warning signs were given to him right as he was entering office. But all of it, and when, of course, it just exasperated to exponential rates at that point. I mean, we were talking about fraud and Medicaid fraud, Medicare fraud going to fund Al-Shabaab and the Horn of Africa going back to 2016. That's when that conversation, frankly, started, but it exasperated in 2020 when we're talking about being probably in a dozen different state agencies at this point with different fraud schemes that have unfolded, predominantly in the Somali community. That's just kind of the effect you get when you mass migrate a group of individuals who were experiencing, as difficult as that is, when you come to America at that point and you don't assimilate, you end up running into these problems like 58% poverty rate, 40% unemployment, 41% don't have a high school education, and now billions potentially in fraud just consuming the state of Minnesota at this point.
The fraud allegations have been going on for years, and there are, I think, credible reports from whistleblowers in state government who said, we tried to tell Tim Walz what was going on. And not only did he look the other way, but there are reports that he retaliated against whistleblowers. And there are other reports where people in the government have said, well, we really couldn't do anything about this Somali corruption because we didn't want to look racist. So we just had to look the other way.
No, completely.
Is that what's happening there? We just have to allow corruption to occur so we don't appear to be racist? Is that what's going on in Minnesota?
This is exactly what happened, though, Scott. I'm broke out. Now, to the credit, they did attempt to stop payments on Feed Our Future after months and months of push against it. They're saying we're suspecting fraud. We got to shut this down. But Omar Fateh and Jamal Osman on the Minneapolis City Council and then the state Senate with Omar Fateh there, they were lobbying to Tim Walz and the office because they're in on this fraud, by the way. They're all associated with different nonprofits because they have family members on these boards that are working with it. And ultimately, they're tied to different schemes that are also stealing, $13, $14 million in fraud as well. They're lobbying saying, hey, you can't stop these payments. This is the people's money. It's federal money. You can't stop it. And we're going to call you a racist if you try it. So they stopped. And they had the ability also to do subpoenas on the bank records. And an audit had shown this through State Government Oversight Committee that they refused to actually subpoena the bank records, which would have proven that we're sending money over to the Horn of Africa. It's going to these different agencies and these potentially funding through Hawalas, the bank givers out there in the Horn of Africa, that it might be funding terrorism too. But they ignored it throughout the entire way. In fact, we even see recordings of Keith Ellison, our Attorney General, communicating with the fraudsters before it was discovered, and they were donating thousands of dollars to his re-election campaign, including his son on the city council.
This stinks so badly, and you have Walz sitting at the top of it. You have Ellison taking campaign contributions. You have Ilhan Omar saying, well, it was their fault for not putting in proper guardrails. So people should be allowed to steal if we don't put in the proper guardrails. This thing stinks. Multiple people have been indicted. Others have been convicted. I hope the investigations are continuing. Dustin Grage from townhall.com. We will stay with you on this story and follow it here on the Scott Jennings Show. We're going to take a break. When we come back, Noah Rothman from National Review is here. Stay with us. Common sense for the American people. It's Scott Jennings on the Salem Radio Network.
Welcome to Earth, third rock from the sun.
Hey, Sean, with Noah, I might actually play a couple clips.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Hey, with Noah, I might actually play a couple of the clips. I'm looking at the sheet here. Thinking about here, all of them with me.
My friends tell me that I've been such a fool.
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes.
Oh, for loving you. Drown myself in sorrow as I look at what you've done. But nothing seems to change. The bad times stay the same, and I can't run. Sometimes I feel. Sometimes I feel.
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
To the whipping post. Good Lord, I feel like I'm dying.
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 2 minutes. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 1 minute and 30. This network will return in 1 minute.
Sometimes I feel. Sometimes I feel.
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 45 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem return from break in 30 seconds. The Scott Radio Network will return from break in 15 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 5 seconds.
Shooting star leaping through the sky like a tiger.
The man who made CNN say Jennings.
The American people here on the Salem Radio Network. Noah Rothman from National Review joins us in just a moment. But first, on this Thursday, I want to pause and take a moment to say thank you to everyone who has already joined our Angel Tree Christmas campaign. And I want to invite the rest of you who are listening to chip in because of your generosity and that of other caring friends who've gone to scottjenningsshow.com, scottjenningsshow.com, and clicked on the Angel Tree banner. All these kids are going to experience the joy of an Angel Tree Christmas gift. It's a really great program. And all these kids are going to get a personal note from their parent who is in prison, and they're going to get a gospel message about the good news of Jesus Christ this year. Now, Christmas is just a few weeks away. If you feel led to do so, I'd like to ask you to consider giving to this program to reach even more children of prisoners. You'll bring the joy of Christmas to more boys and girls who, through no fault of their own, are going to be feeling lonely this time of the year. I want you to listen to George Carter. This man is a former prisoner himself. Here's George.
It's so important that community gets involved in something like this because these kids, they're the innocent ones. They're not the ones that committed crimes. It was their parents. And so they already feel just pain, the loss of a parent that's not there. And to be connected with someone who represents their parent really means a lot. I mean, it means the world to these kids.
Now, my website, again, is scottjenningsshow.com. You go on there, you click the Angel Tree banner, and your generous gift will make Christmas very special. You can change a kid's life, frankly, for $30. So you can do it at scottjenningsshow.com. You can also call them up, 888-206-2793. I'm asking you, bless another deserving boy or girl with your generous donation to our Angel Tree Christmas campaign. It's Scott Jennings on the Salem Radio Network. As I mentioned, our special conversation today is with Noah Rothman, who is an author, a political analyst, and senior writer for National Review. Noah has a third book on the way called Blood and Progress, A Century of Left-Wing Violence in America. Noah Rothman, welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
Hey, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on. Now, we saw each other a couple of weeks ago up at Yale University, and we had a great friendly tete-a-tete up there about the Trump agenda and whether it can be considered conservative. And coming up on December the 12th on this program, I've actually got the audio from our exchange, and I'm going to bring that to the audience here. But I had such a good time conversing with you. I wanted to invite you on the show today, A, to tell us about your book, and B, I want to kick around a couple of issues. But first, let's talk about the book, Blood and Progress, A Century of Left-Wing Violence in America. You can pre-order it now, yes, and when will we get it?
It's coming out on May 19th of next year, so there's a little bit of time here. But there was a lot of activity in this space over the course of this year, a pretty dramatic and horrible year. And, we sold this book at the beginning of the summer, but there was episode after episode after episode of left-wing violence over the course of this year that made it such an urgent project that we did push it up a little bit. So I'm working on the manuscript as we speak. But yes, this is about the fact that it was based on an essay that was published in Commentary 2025, which attempted to get the left in particular and the commanding heights of American institutions, most of which are controlled by the left, to confront the fact that left-wing violence is eclipsing episodes of right-wing violence, and they don't see it. They can't seem to recognize it. These institutions are hyper-vigilant right-wing violence, and there is right-wing violence, but they're convinced of the fact, in fact, that this notion is reinforced by journalistic institutions and watchdogs like the Southern Poverty Law Center that maintain, quote unquote, that left-wing violence is a myth. Not only is it not a myth, we've had a century of left-wing violence, beginning at the beginning of this century, political violence, terroristic violence in the name of revolutionary left-wing activities, even Bolshevism. And we've seen it reemerge over the course of the last 2 decades, fiercely, aggressively, dangerously. And it's just not recognized as such. So what this book attempts to do is, confront you with the litany of episodes that we've been experiencing in our time, tether them back to the 1910s, the 1920s, the 1960s, and 1970s, and our era, and you see striking similarities, even predictive and prescriptive elements that can help us recognize when a wave of left-wing terroristic violence is upon us. And so I hope this book is not just a polemic, but a valuable thing for American policymakers if they really do want to confront political violence in this country. They're looking at only one side of the equation, and that's why they're so confounded by it. If we don't summon the courage to be consistent, and it's consistently revulsed by political violence in our time, we will continue to experience more of it.
Yeah, it sort of drives me crazy. No, I go on CNN and, when something violent happens, and it's regrettable whenever it happens, and it's terrible, but these people just repeat like zombies. If it's on the left, the immediate pivot is, well, it happens on both sides, and it really doesn't compare to what happens on the right. And then they also pivot to my other favorite thing. When something happens on the left, Scott, what is it that Donald Trump is going to do to fix all this? You've got these left-wing agitators, violent agitators, and it all roads lead back to Donald. Why is Donald Trump causing all this left-wing violence? Every single time. So I'm looking forward to your book, because I think the myth out there
today, Scott, today is the 1-year anniversary of the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, shot in the back by Luigi Mangione, allegedly. And that is illustrative of the problem that we're facing, because instantly he was transformed into some sort of an avenging angel, an anti-capitalist hero, even though he himself was a scion of wealth, a wastrel whose back problems were not United Healthcare's issue. The catchphrases that he put on his bullets became featured on on-demand merchandise. His name was cheered on Saturday Night Live. He was celebrated at concerts. Political actors, Senator Chris Murphy, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, all of them condemned violence. But, they said, very pregnant but, all of them. You have to understand, people are angry, people are enraged, the healthcare system is broken, the election system is broken, everything is broken, society is broken. So what can you do except rage and engage in revolutionary violence? It is dangerous stuff, and they don't see it. They don't recognize it. I really hope Blood and Progress comes out on May 19th, and I hope you do consider pre-ordering it. I hope this book puts a harsh mirror in front of their faces and compels them to look at the atrocities that they're welcoming and excusing and accepting. Look at what they've become, and look at what you're doing to the fabric of this country.
Well, what you're alluding to is what they all but say, which is this violence is justified. Look what happened after Charlie Kirk was murdered. You had thousands upon thousands of people taking to social media to celebrate it and to argue that finally we've done something right here. After the Luigi case that you mentioned, there's still people holding Luigi pep rallies in New York City. Every time he appears in court, there's a whole gaggle of people who show up to have Luigi pep rallies. And these liberal Democratic politicians live in fear of these sort of violent outrage mobs. And so they basically just fall in line with what the mobs want. It's pretty despicable.
It's terrifying. It's terrifying. It's affecting the governance in this country, because individuals with families are understandably menaced by this emerging violent movement. And it's not just big episodes of assassinations like the two we've discussed. The most menacing aspect of our moment are the violent assaults on law enforcement. The attacks on ICE, the attacks on CPP, one of which was a small cell terrorist event, a very sophisticated assault where individuals were used fireworks to distract the officers, bring them out in the open, fired on them for two aligned positions. It was really tactically adroit. And that's the sort of thing that is redolent of the anarchist wave of violence in the 1910s, the Weather Underground, the Black Liberation Army, the Symbionese Liberation Army, and so on in the 70s and 60s. This is the kind of moment that we're living in. And if we don't arrest its progress now, it's going to get so much worse.
Yeah, you're bringing up these attacks on law enforcement, and the way they get people to engage in these attacks is to create narratives about what law enforcement are doing that just aren't true. You can turn on your television any night and hear any Democratic or anchor talking head say, well, they're disappearing American citizens. They're violating the Constitution. They're this, they're that.
Right.
It's all designed. By the way, it's false. It's all propaganda, but it's all designed to whip up these outrage mobs. I want to shift gears on topics because there's a link here, I think, to what's happening with this conversation about the illegal military orders. You've got Democrats saying, well, you don't have to follow illegal orders. And then you have this fabricated story about what Pete Hegseth supposedly did, but turns out didn't do, regarding this Venezuelan boat strike. Let me play a clip today from Senator Mark Warner. I want you to listen to this, Noah. I want to get your reaction. Here's what Senator Warner said about our military and what they should be doing. Here's Warner.
Unprecedented disrespect when they were all brought to get a pep rally in front of Hegseth and Trump. This is an administration that's fired, uniform generals from the head of the NSA, the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency. And I think in many ways, uniform military may help save us from this president and his lame people like Hegseth, because I think their commitment is to the Constitution and obviously not to Trump. And I expect Bradley to adhere to that.
So, Senator, let's go a little further on this. What are concerns you have about the legality of these strikes at all?
So that's Democratic Senator Mark Warner essentially saying that the uniformed military needs to engage in a coup against the commander-in-chief and the defense secretary. Is that how it hit your ear, Noah?
That's what he's implying. Everybody can understand the subtextual meaning of what he's trying to convey, and it's incredibly irresponsible. And there was, I think, which is one of the reasons why I found it more sad than anything else, that video of these lawmakers who were formerly service personnel, thankful for their service, but nevertheless, their articulation of what was essentially just common understanding among people in uniform, that you could be prosecuted if you were given an illegal directive. Nobody needs to hear that if you're a uniformed service personnel or somebody in the services at all. The people who needed to hear that was the resistance left. That was who it was directed to. And that's what this argument is directed to. It is an attempt to gin up their base activist voters, many of whom labor under the delusion that fascism has descended across the country, and they want constant reinforcement for that delusion. I'm just hesitant to render a verdict yet on this strike. I think you're correct that the language that was reportedly attributed to Pete Hegseth in the Washington Post has been rather firmly refuted. But the actual sequence of events there, I think we just don't know enough about it to attempt to render a judgment. And the senator doesn't either. That's what he's saying. I don't have enough information. So withhold your judgment, Senator. Instead, goes out and whips a frenzy and tries to articulate the rationale for the sort of stuff that has led people to engage in property destruction and violence at the very least, but certainly dispirits them, disillusions, convinces them that the federal government is out to get them. And that's the sort of thing that can lead to a bunch of different, really self-destructive conclusions. The least of which is just, the banal of which is just to withdraw from the political process. The worst is to attack the foundations of this wholly immoral system.
That's Noah Rothman from National Review. More with him in just a moment. We're going to take a break. First, a quick note from our friends at Relief Factor. We know we get letters. Here's one from Travis. He told us it used to take him 1 hour to walk a single mile. Then he gets on the Relief Factor. Now he's doing 4 miles an hour. He's even running, he tells us in his letter. If pain is slowing you down, imagine what getting your freedom back would feel like. Imagine what it felt like for old Travis. Try the 3-week quick start. It could be your first step. Go to relieffactor.com or call 1-800-4RELIEF. More with political analyst and author and National Review reporter Noah Rothman when we come back. It's Common Sense for the American People. Scott Jennings on the Salem Radio Network.
I wanna make a supersonic man out of you. Stop me now. I'm having such a good time. I'm having a ball.
The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network. Break in 3 minutes. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem break in 30 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 2 minutes. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 1 minute and 30 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return in 1 minute. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 45 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return from break in 30 seconds. The Scott Jennings Show on the Salem Radio Network will return in 15 seconds. The Scott Jennings Network will return from break in 5 seconds.
The very definition of never back down. Here's Scott.
Down in the hollers where the folks.
So the FBI has arrested a suspect in its investigation into pipe bombs that were planted near the Republican and Democratic National Party headquarters in Washington on January 5th, 2021. Remember the pipe bombs? They hadn't really known who did that, but the FBI today has arrested a man named Brian Cole Jr., and they are just wrapping up a press conference. So we'll have more on that story tomorrow here on the Scott Jennings Show. More with Noah Rothman from National Review in just a moment. First, a quick word from our friends at Americans for Free Markets. They are happy with and thanking President Trump for his commitment to stopping this government-driven debanking, where they keep you from having banking services because they don't like your politics. Well, Trump signed an executive order on it. That is good. But we have to go further. Americans for Free Market says Congress needs to act to codify this executive order and advance critical reforms that strengthen the president's leadership on this idea of making sure everyone can have fair access to financial services. You can learn more about it and how to protect free markets and ensure access to banking for all Americans, regardless of their politics, by visiting forfreemarkets.org. That's FOR, freemarkets.org. Debanking, it's bad. Trump's right on it. Let's see if we can get Congress to take it a step further. Scott Jennings here on the Salem Radio Network. I'm with my friend Noah Rothman from National Review. Noah has a book coming out next May. It's been announced. You can order it now. It's called Blood and Progress, A Century of Left-Wing Violence in America. I think you're going to want to pick this up. If you're as tired as I am of the political narratives and the media narratives regarding who's responsible for political violence in America, I think Noah's got the book coming up for you. Noah, I want to turn to politics for just a moment. I want to play a quick clip. Sean, let's grab the clip of Ted Cruz, senator from Texas, talking about the upcoming midterms. Let's hear Ted Cruz, and Noah, I want to get your reaction. Here's Cruz.
It's going to be a turnout election, and the left will show up, hate a powerful motivator. They hate President Trump. It doesn't matter. He could cure cancer. He could feed the entire world, and they would hate him. Nothing he can do to change that. What we've got to make sure is, number one, that conservatives go up, but number two, that just the common sense middle, regular people who is dangerous in an off-cycle election is people that are feeling complacent, like things are going well, I'm happy, and the danger is those folks stay home. We've got to set out the alarm bell that if we allow the Democrats to flip the House, to flip the Senate, it is an absolute catastrophe.
It's bad for the country.
You hear Ted Cruz there, Noah? What's your reaction?
Yeah, well, the senator's correct. And I would drill down a little further on the demographics that he's trying to talk to. And I would say that these individuals that he's talking to, the bread and butter, what used to be the bread and butter of the Republican coalition is the suburbs. Relatively affluent, educated, about 40 minutes outside the city. They have families. They're stakeholders in their communities, and they vote in every single election. Those are the guys that the demographics that the Republican Party has sacrificed in the Trump era to a certain extent in favor of a much more working class coalition, which has a tendency to not turn out. You know, except once every 4 years, you had Republican Congressman Burchett essentially say this. Traditionally, Republicans, he said this the other day, traditionally Republicans don't vote in midterms. That's not true. It's been true for my entire adult life. It's a very recent vintage that this is the case, and in part because the Republican Party has the people who are most focused on their economic circumstances and are most inclined to vote or to participate in civic processes in order to advance their economic circumstances. I've tended to be a little bit more upscale for middle class and middle class. And that is just the coalition that the Republican Party is not focused on, hasn't been focused on for some time. And they need to get more focused on it. They just do. They need to demonstrate that their policies are providing concrete, tangible benefits to them, giving them more consumer choice, putting more money in their pocketbooks. The tax reforms that are going to come online next year will contribute to that, but it's actually codifying what was in the 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act. The president's initiative today, or yesterday rather, I think speaks to that approach, that political imperative, rolling back Joe Biden's electric vehicle mandates and emission standards, incredibly unrealistic, part of the last administration's effort to make fossil fuels financially prohibitive. Right. And gently socially engineer this green, revolution. That was imperious. It was really ugly, motivated by a lot of climatological catastrophism, as well as some really negative impressions about voters. And the Trump administration reversed it. Good for them. You know what? It puts more money in your pocket. It gives more choice. That's the Republican strategy. The market works to lower prices. Republicans should be saying that a lot.
Noah Rothman from National Review. Grab his book, Blood and Progress, A Century of Left-Wing Violence in America. More tomorrow from Arizona. Scott Jennings here on the Salem Radio Network.
The fastest growing show on syndicated radio. Welcome aboard. This is the Scott Jennings Show.